Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What Does Jesus Teach? Today, we're going to be entering part 15 of the discussion of pre-wrath versus pre-tribulation. Today's discussion is on the 24 elders mentioned in the book of Revelations and determining if that represents the church or not. If so, why? If not, why? Okay, so it is a common belief among pre-tribulation believers that the 24 elders mentioned in Revelations 4 through 5 do represent the church. It's believed for a few reasons, which we're going to walk through today. I'm going to tell you, I don't believe the 24 elders are the church, and I will present why I do not in this study. Let's begin. Okay, in Revelations chapter 4, verses 1 through 4, it shows the first mention of these 24 elders. Let's read the passage. It says, "After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven. And the first voice which I had heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me, said, 'Come up here, and I excuse me, and I will show you what must take place after these things.' Immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one sitting on the throne. And he who was sitting like a jasper stone and a sardius in appearance. And there was a rainbow around the throne, and like an emerald in appearance. Around the throne were 24 thrones, and upon the thrones I saw 24 elders, sitting, clothed in white garments and golden crowns on their heads. Pre-tribulation believers will attempt to connect that John being called up to be shown these things in heaven directly or indirectly means that this is where the rapture takes place, thus adding evidence that the 24 elders are the church. Okay, so let's explore that. Okay, the first claim within Revelations 4, chapter 4, is that the elders are dressed in white. And again, and you'll see right there, I highlighted it in red. It says clothed in white garments. Now, one reason pre-tribulation claims that the elders represent the church is that they are clothed in white. Well, if you looked at it that way, then the angels in heaven are also clothed in white. If you look at John 20:12 and Acts 1:10, for example, show two angels dressed in white on each of those occasions. To say that being dressed in white must mean that this is the raptured church is an assumption because dressed in white is seen in others, not specific to the church. I'll read it here. Acts chapter 1:10, it says, "And as they were gazing intently into the sky," referring to the disciples, "while he, Jesus, was going, behold, two men in white clothing stood beside them." And it's understood that those are two angels clarifying, what to expect when Jesus returned, which was said afterwards. In John chapter 20, verse 12, it says, "And she saw two angels in white sitting, one at the head and one at the feet, where the body of Jesus had been lying." Okay, once again, we see angelic beings in white. So if we were to say clothed in white garments was exclusively trying to determine or explicitly trying to determine that this is the church based on being in white garments, well, that's not consistent language. Because then you'd have to say that the angels, based on that same premise, are part of the church, which we know that's not the case. Claim two, the elders are wearing crowns, golden crowns in particular. And I've highlighted in verse 4 where it says, "And golden crowns on their heads." Now, one response is that comes up is that they have the crowns. The premise is that since believers are promised a crown or a number of crowns, depending how you personally see it, the elders wearing a crown is evidence that they represent the church. Often in research, I find many who defend the addition that the Greek word used, Stephanos, is used for crown here, and it is the same word as the crowns given to believers, such as the crown of life. For example, James 1:12 says, "He will receive the crown, Stephanos, of life." Since the elders have Stephanos, they must be the same. So let's see if that's biblically consistent. Now in Hebrews 2:7, Jesus has a crown. The horse rider in Revelation 6:2, often referred to as the Antichrist, also has a crown. In Revelations 9:7, it shows the demon locust in one of the trumpet plagues had crowns on the forehead, and actually golden crowns, if I recall. And the woman in Revelations 12:1, which represents Israel, also had a crown. The being in Revelations 14:14 also had a golden crown on his head. There's too many characters in the story, especially in the book of Revelations, with crowns on their heads to suggest that this means that the elders are raptured, that they represent the raptured church based on this idea. In addition, the word Stephanos is used in every one of the following scriptures below, which are mentioned up top. This makes it very subjective to make these kinds of statements that the crowns being worn by the elders means that they are the church because obviously they had crowns. But when you have so many other characters having crowns, uh, everything from like Hebrews 2:7 talking about Jesus, Revelations 9:7, the demon locals they have crowns like gold. Revelations 12:1, the woman clothed in the sun, and she had a crown. Uh, and they're all use the same Greek word Stephanos. So, except in Hebrews 2:7, which a verb, which I think it's Stephano, I'm just saying it like that because I don't remember exactly how it reads. But basically, it's a verb format of Stephanos, but the same word that they were crowned. So, because we have so many, it's very difficult to just throw it out there and say, well, they had white robes, they have crowns. Oh, that must be the church. Meanwhile, we have other beings in the scriptures, in the book of Revelations alone, even that that have the crowns, and other places the angels have dressed in white. That alone doesn't mean that you're a redeemed part of the church. Okay. Now, a response I have. Now, I'm going to say to review Revelations chapter 5, verses 8 through 10. In this passage, pre-tribulation sometimes will suggest that because the elders are singing this particular song, it means that they are the church. This mostly comes out of the King James Bible translations, and we'll look at that as well. But let's take a look at the passage fully. When he had taken the book, the four living creatures and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp, golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. Now, often pre-tribulation believers will suggest that the song the elders sing is about themselves being redeemed, thus meaning this is the elders representing the church based on the song that they're singing. So let's walk this through. In verse 9, you see the four living creatures and the 24 elders sing this song together. In that song, they make a reference to God purchasing men or people from each tribe, tongue, people, and nation. They do not include themselves and actually make a direct distinction using the third person pronoun. Now, I understand the King James Version translation uses the word us in contrast, and we're going to get to that shortly. In verse 10, you see them singing the song that God made them a kingdom of priests to God, and they, again, third person, will reign. Again, this shows two additional times a third person pronoun is used, further making a distinction. The King James Version uses the word us, which again, we will get into shortly. Now, we see both the four living creatures and the 24 elders singing the same song. Pre-tribulation does not and cannot claim that the four living creatures are the church, but both groups are singing this song together. So it is inconsistent to suggest that the 24 elders are the church because they're singing that song, but then the other four living creatures who are with them singing the same exact song are somehow not the church then, even though it says that they're singing the same song together. And this actually shows identically in the King James Version translation. So the point I'm making here is that if the song that they're singing is supposed to be representative of only, but it's almost like saying the elders of the church because only they would be able to sing the song about redemption and so on. Great. But the four living creatures are singing the same exact song with them. But somehow the four living creatures are not the church, but the 24 elders are. So you can't apply that rule consistently because then you either make the four living creatures part of the church, which pre tribulation does not believe is the case, or neither one is actually the church and they're just singing a song. Whether it's them or us, we, whatever the case is, it doesn't matter because if you don't put the four living creatures together with the 24 elders, then it's being inconsistency applied. So either both of the church or neither of the church. And since one of the two is definitely not the church, even among pre tribulation believers, then neither really is a church. Now, as clarification, we do find in verse 9 the living creatures singing that they're included as if they were redeemed. If, the 24 elders do represent the church and the four living creatures do not, then this would be faulty writing by John if the elders were to represent the church. because it would mean also that the four living creatures would be non-human celestial beings included in the redemption brought upon by the sacrifice of Jesus on the cross. Again, it's just an additional clarification of emphasis I forgot a second ago. Okay. In Revelations 5:8, we find that both the 24 elders, all the 24 elders are holding on to the bowls. These bowls are described as containing the prayers of the saints. This brings two complications if the elders are supposed to represent the church, as pre-tribulationists will say. First, from a grammatical point of view, the scripture shows that they are carrying the prayers of the saints, not their own prayers. There is a distinction present here, which implies that the prayers are not their own, but someone else's prayers. If I carry a basket and let's say the fruits are mine, I don't say I carry the basket of, I don't know, others. No, I'll say I'm carrying the basket of fruit that's mine, or I'm carrying my basket. You don't say that I am carrying, or let's just say in the third person, he is carrying the basket of others, or some other name other than the person who's carrying it if it belongs to me. If it's mine, it is correct grammatically to say, or it would be more grammatically correct to say, that they're carrying the bowls of their own prayers, or as a church, they're carrying, they represent the prayers of all the saints, or something that's more specific. But in the third person like that, it's talking about somebody else's prayers, not their own. The second part is that if that were the case, this would also mean that the church would be carrying their own prayers. If the elders were the church, um, why not just simply say, sorry, I guess I'm repeating it. I'm ahead of myself. Yeah, but why not simply say they're just carrying their own prayers? It would make it so much simpler. It would make it prove that that's a church, and we called it a day. Though it would kind of be odd with the other stuff I had talked about, but at least that would lend some support. But there's nothing there to really show that it's really their own prayers. Again, it's really odd. All right, response number three. Now, this is what I was getting to earlier. There is a known textual difference in the Greek manuscripts that feed into the King James Version translations versus most other translations. It has to do with the pronoun usage, in, mostly in verse 10 of chapter 5, where it says in most of the translations, it'll say, "You have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth." And I put a bunch of different translations that have this, NASB, NIV, AMP, ASV, CB, and so on. You see a bunch there. I think I meant to put TLV instead of TVL. That's my fault. Now, if you go to the King James translations and Young's literal, there may be one or two in there as well. I just don't remember what they are. It'll say, "You have made us to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and we will reign upon the earth." Now, this is a point that's been debated widely as to which Greek manuscript is the correct one. And we could go down that route, but then you're basically having an argument of which one is more correct, which one was made earlier. How many Greek manuscripts support one versus the other in totality and quantity, and so on and so on. You could get into that, and we could go walk through that research, but truly, this now becomes a minor issue because of the points that we made, all these other points that we've made so far, especially the part about the four living creatures singing the song with the 24 elders. If the big deal is the song and singing that song makes it to the elders of the church, then you have to agree that the four living creatures are also part of the church. But pre-tribulation believers will not do that because they recognize that those are celestial beings and thus not part of the church. So then singing the song in itself is disqualified as meaning that any of those are the church because both of them are singing that song. Okay, moving on. All right, response number four, the great multitudes. Okay, now in all of the book of Revelations, we find either specific numbers or references to great multitudes. The question I would say is, well, where is the church? Here's what I mean by that. The elders mentioned here in chapters 4 and 5 are numbered to 24, but there's no reference anywhere surrounding these texts showing a great multitude in chapter 4 or 5 when pointing at the elders. If this is supposed to represent the church, there should be like this innumerable number of people, but instead it's only 24 elders. We don't see an enormous number from every nation, tribe, or tongue, etc., until Revelation 7:9. But we don't see it anywhere else in heaven before that point. Why is that? You know, I've heard it said a few times, maybe the 24 represent the 12 disciples and the 12 apostles. I'm sorry, the 12 tribes of Israel and, the 12 apostles, all these different numbers. The weird thing would be if the 12 apostles were part of the 24, well, then John would have been really surprised to see his own face staring right back at him. I think that would have been worth mentioning personally. Um, he never referred to, in the person like, hey, look at us. We are the 24 elders. That's not even mentioned. I mean, you think that might be one. Again, that's a side point, but one that I hear from time to time. So let me read Revelation 7:9 through 10. And this is where I see the rapture happening. So we see John says, after these things, and this is after the 144,000 were sealed, before the trumpet judgments even begin, says, after these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes, palm branches were in their hands, and they cry out with a loud voice, saying, salvation to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. This is the first time in everything John has seen so far that there's like this crazy amount of people show up out of nowhere. Now, if nobody had ever told you that pre-tribulation doctrine existed, the natural reading of this would be this is the church. They've arrived. They were brought out. But because of pre-tribulation doctrine, when it says in the verses that follow about how, these are people that came out of the tribulation, like, oh, no, wait, that's not the church because they came out of the tribulation. But if you look at all the videos, that's exactly when the church is supposed to come. But I digress. So for me, I would say it falls on the pre-tribulation believer to prove and explain why John were to describe the entirety of the church by 24 individuals, but later on describe what they consider non-church saints or the tribulation saints, described by a number that can't be counted. The 24 elders are never described as associated with a large number of people, but Revelation 7:9 through 10 does show this indeed. I hope I've conveyed enough evidence and refutation of this idea that the 24 elders are the church. At the very least, no person can make this claim definitively after examining everything we have on the topic. Take a look at it, read it for yourself. If you have any questions, comments, or arguments, feel free to put them in the comments section. That's fine. Um, I'm ultimately interested in the truth. So if somebody has a really good, solid argument that I can consider, let me know. But if you're going to depend on the crowns, or the white robe or the song, those don't make sense. Those really make the argument neutral or really more negative in terms of that being the church because it it doesn't hold water. It's not you. None of those 3 points can be consistently applied biblically without then causing other issues. So if there's one that you feel that can be applied consistently in Scripture or that's very direct that I've missed, please let me know. One thing I'm going to start naming, and I haven't done this lately because I'm generally not trying to focus on growing the channel. But as I'm learning more about YouTube, I understand that when people do hit that like button or subscribe, I guess it makes it easier for more people to see this. So I guess if you do like the teachings and you want others to see it, please hit that like button. Again, I at this time I'm not making any money off this, so it's really not about that. But it does make it so the YouTube, you know, mechanisms, whatever you want to call it, makes it easier to be searched and people to share, people to find this. And if you feel that this is truth, do that. If you don't like it, then hit the dislike button. That's fine too. But definitely comment. Let me know if there's anything you want to discuss further, and I'd be happy to take a look at it once I can. With that being said, God bless you, and may God's grace be upon you.